Stan Hansen is one of the greatest tag wrestlers ever, and he's absolutely one of the greatest real-world tag league guys in all Japan, right up there at the top when it comes to statistics. He's one of a handful of wrestlers who have won the tag league 4 times, the others being Mitsuharu Misawa, who won 4 straight between 1992 and 1995, Satoshi Kojima, and the more recent additions of Suwama and Kento Miyahara. All these guys are just behind the leading duo of Jumbo Tsuruta and Kenta Kobashi, both of whom won it 5 times. The unique part of Hansen's quartet of wins, which I think is very cool, is that he won it with 4 different partners. A couple of the other guys won their 4 leagues with 3 partners, but Hansen's the only guy to have a different one each time. In fact, Hansen had 12 different partners during his tag league battles, which is quite the wild statistic, especially for someone who was so good at winning the tournament. I'm pretty sure that's a record for amount of partners in the tag league, and it's cool to have someone be so strong in the tournament with so many different people. So, I thought it would be fun to look at Hansen's 12 tag partners. It's a varied selection of guys, from young prospects to people who are already legends, and obviously some teams that were utterly fearsome. We're going to do it based on the team's performances, starting with the weakest stats and going all the way up to the top. Looking at tag league stuff is always tons of fun, so, well, let's get on with it. Okay, so this first one is actually a wrestler I covered very recently. Indeed, I basically covered this exact tag league partnership. It's Bobby Duncum Jr, who was a part of All Japan's Foreigners for a couple of years, never really managing to get out of the mid-card. Teaming with Hansen is certainly the highlight of his All Japan run, and the connection is obvious. We've got a young cowboy here, and he's getting a run with the top cowboy, who by this time is getting on a little bit. By 1997, Stan Hansen was gradually winding things down, or so it seemed. Duncum does end up being pinned in most of these matches. They certainly weren't ever in any contention to win the league, but you wouldn't have expected them to be. Eventually, they ended up with 6 points and 6th place, winning matches against the teams of Hayabusa and Jinsei Shinzaki, Tamon Honda and Takao Omori, and Jun Izumida and Giant Kimala. It's a close one, Finn, but I think the Hansen Duncum team does just end up at the bottom. It's not a terrible team or anything, but it's nothing compared to what we've got coming. The other Hansen team that didn't really do an awful lot came the year before Duncum, and of course it's another young partner who's taken under the Lariat's win. In 1996, that role went to Takao Omori. I debated a little bit as to whether to put Duncum or Omori at the bottom, seeing as they both ended up with 6 points, but I think that Hansen and Omori edges this, mainly due to one of their 3 scalps being a really freaking big one. In the 3rd match of the tournament, Hansen rolled back the years and the team upset the Holy Demon Army of Akira Taue and Toshiaki Kawada, although sadly this match didn't make TV. The other 2 victories came against Jun Izumida and Kimala, and Gary Albright and Sabu. Both Omori and Bobby Duncum Jr were pretty established amongst Hansen's seconds around this time, and he would team a lot with both guys outside of the Real World Tag League. But here, Omori is still a couple of years from really coming to prominence, which would happen when he paired up with Yoshihiro Takayama and formed Team No Fear. Or, more accurately, No Fear! We do get a bit of a jump as we hit the 10th ranked wrestler. One of the impressive things about Hansen in the tag league, in fact, is that of the 12 partners, his teams with Duncum and Omori were pretty much the only times that the Hansen team wasn't at least in contention to win the tournament. He was basically always in there with a chance on the final night at the Nippon Budokan. Anyway, this is 1995, and Hansen's partner is Gary Albright, who hadn't long arrived in All Japan after building a pretty fearsome name for himself over in UWFI. Hansen and Albright's most certainly a team that's going to do plenty of damage, especially as a big part of this tag league is centred around establishing the permed up suplex sicko as a big deal against the top brass. And so the Hansen and Albright team ends up scoring an excellent 15 points out of a possible 18, which is enough for 3rd. They do drop points against the Holy Demon and Super Generation armies, but they manage to take Kawada and Taue to a 30-minute draw, although this single point in the second to last match does take them out of the run-in for the Yusho, which would ultimately be decided in a playoff bout between the Holy Demon and Super Generation armies in, well, yet another god-tier match between the two teams, of course. The majority of teams that Hansen and Albright face are quite simply ran the hell over. Between Hansen's brawling and Albright's suplexes, the likes of Jun Akiyama and Omori, Doug Furness and Dan Quaffett, and Johnny Smith and Rob Van Dam, they didn't stand a chance. Albright and Hansen would actually end up winning the tag straps briefly in January of '96, although Albright's most successful All Japan team would be with Dr. Death Steve Williams as part of the Triangle of Power. We skip back a couple of years to 1992. It's a couple of months after Stan Hansen lost the Triple Crown to Mitsuharu Misawa, signifying the beginning of the Four Pillars being on top, and here in the tag league he's teaming up with another well-established American, that being Johnny Ace. In the main, this one represents Johnny Ace's big climb up the company ladder. The previous tag league saw him only get 4 points when partnered with the fabulously named Sunny Beach, but he wins 17 points when teamed with Hansen, and the teams in contention for the tournament, as well as the tag titles that are often awarded to the winner, all the way to the finish. Again, they only drop 3 points. Their one loss comes against Giant Baba and Kenta Kobashi, and in the final match they draw against the Miracle Violence Connection, opening things up for Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada to secure the Yusho, which they do with a victory against Akira Taue and the super rookie Jun Akiyama that gives them 18 points. Old Mr. People Power Dynamic Dude did come pretty close to winning the tag league here, and it wouldn't be the only time. He also wasn't far off when teamed up with Steve Williams in 1994, and he did well in 95 with The Patriot, and in 97 with Kenta Kobashi. Tag wrestling is definitely where Ace shines the most, far better than he ever did in singles, and he would ultimately win the All Japan tag titles 4 times, twice with Kenta Kobashi and once with Steve Williams and Mike Barton. Oh, and just to balance things out a bit, because I don't like talking about him positively for too long, Mitsuharu Misawa dropped Johnny Ace directly on his head that one time. I might have referenced that before, I'm not sure. We move all the way forward to 1999 and Stan Hansen's final outing in the tag league. His last 2 tournaments do see him right back in the thick of things after his previously middling runs with Bobby Duncum and Takao Omori. We're going to look at the Dream Team from 1998 in the next entry, but Hansen's last tag league hurrah sees him paired up with Akira Taue, who is himself a 2-time winner with Toshiaki Kawada. The league has been pared down a little bit for 1998 and 1999, with only 8 teams participating as opposed to the 10 or 11 that were often seen in years past, but naturally Hansen and Taue end up being a formidable pairing. As is often the case, they only end up losing one match and drawing another. The loss comes against Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Agawa, and they draw with Johnny Ace and Mike Barton. 11 points is enough for Hansen and Taue to top the table, but by this stage the tag league is decided with a final match against the top 2, and Hansen, just as he was in the previous year, is thwarted by the team of Jun Akiyama and Kenta Kobashi. With Hansen taken out of commission after a big lariat from Kobashi, the young Akiyama gets the pinfall following a big knee and the Exploder 98 to Taue, winning his 2nd tag league. Kobashi gets his 5th tag league here, tying him with Jumbo Tsuruta. The arrival of Vader to All Japan in late 1998 saw the company naturally take the opportunity to put together an absolute dream tag team, 2 of the best foreigners of them all, a pair that already had a great rivalry against each other, one of the most famous matches ever to occur in the Tokyo Dome, certainly one of the most brutal, and now they're together. Hansen and Vader, names that make mortals tremble. One of the main aims of this tag league is for Vader to immediately be positioned as the top foreigner, getting all of his shine back and then some after the largely miserable second half of his WWF run. An immediate statement is made in their very first match when Vader and Hansen utterly crush Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa, Vader pinning Misawa after just 7 minutes. From there, Hansen and Vader run the table in absolutely dominant fashion. None of their matches even get to the 15-minute halfway mark, and their 14-point 100% record obviously tops the table. And yet, well, the final sees them as massive favourites against Jun Akiyama and Kenta Kobashi. The match is perhaps the last really essential Stan Hansen bout, and it has a quite incredible finish. Vader and Hansen look to have it in the bag, Hansen prepping the Western Lariat that's going to send Kobashi to oblivion. However, Kobashi escapes Vader's clutches just as Akiyama rocks Hansen with a knee from the top, and this allows Kobashi to hit a big lariat of his own, getting the win. A brilliant match with a fabulous ending, that one. But the Hansen and Vader team certainly did the job it was intended to do, finally giving Hansen somebody to fully pass the mantle of top foreigner onto. Speaking of dream teams, it's time for Hansen and Baba. While Giant Baba had long pulled himself away from the main event, the Tag League was the one time of the year where that didn't apply. A 2-time winner of the tournament with Jumbo Tsuruta in 1978 and 1980, the Baba team would still usually be in contention in the first half of the 1990s. Sometimes this was a dream pairing, such as the true Colossal Connection team with Andre the Giant, that tied for second place in 91, or it could be an ultra-hot prospect, such as his team with Kenta Kobashi in 1992. In 1993, it ended up being a dream team of Baba and Hansen, age-old rivals now on the same side, although that wasn't the original plan. As we'll get into in more detail later on, Hansen started this year's tag league with Ted DiBiase as his partner. However, DiBiase had to pull out after the first match. It's still early days, so Baba comes in as his replacement, and the team is absolutely fantastic. Giant Baba utterly rolls back the years for this one. I know some people dislike his style of wrestling, but well, they're on, and they're right in the thick of it against every team, only dropping points in 2 draws against the Holy Demon and Super Generation armies, and finishing in second place behind Kobashi and Misawa with 13 points. Again, this could have been enough to force a playoff depending on other results, but Kobashi and Misawa beat Kawada and Taue in an absolute classic of a final match to get the winning 14 points. This is also the first team we're seeing that had more than one tournament. Baba and Hansen unite again for the 1994 Tag League, and they're strong once again, with another second place finish. They draw a bout with Kobashi and Misawa, and there's also a loss against Johnny Ace and Steve Williams. Unfortunately, that wasn't taped, which is disappointing considering it's the team's only Tag League loss, but this is something that continues to cement Steve Williams' place as the top foreigner. At least for a time, until Hansen had to take over again in 1995 following Dr. Death's airline troubles. Anyway, back to 94. Hansen and Baba are out of contention by the time of the final match, thanks to Kobashi and Misawa defeating Steve Williams and Johnny Ace, but that doesn't mean they don't have a major effect on proceedings. The Legends roll it all back once again, and they actually defeat the Holy Demon Army in a classic bout that denies Kawada and Taue the Yusho, leaving both teams on 15 points, and meaning that Kobashi and Misawa secure the 94 league with 16. It is an odd one where the final match doesn't actually see the winners of it claiming the tournament, but it is still a shocking twist. As for Baba, he would do the Tag League just one more time in 1995, earning 10 points with Tamon Honda. We're in the top 5, and here is the most successful non-winner of Hansen's partners. A guy who, well, he never quite got the success he deserved, did he? It's Dangerous Danny Spivey. The Hansen-Spivey partnership was a popular and successful one, earning Stan Hansen his 6th World Tag title along the way, and Spivey himself would be a capable servant for All Japan all the way through to right close to the abrupt end of his career in '95, even if he never quite went past a certain level. Always a gatekeeper, right at the top of the mid-card, but never beyond it. The Real World Tag League with Hansen was where he had his greatest successes and best bouts, the pair competing in the utterly stacked 13-team 1990 and 1991 tournaments and coming second each time. The Hansen-Spivey teams just ahead of Hansen-Baba by virtue of total points won, seeing as they scored 20 points in both tournaments. In 1990, Hansen and Spivey matched the Miracle Violence connection bout for bout. Gordy and Williams only dropped points in a draw against the Funks, while Hansen and Spivey only lost their match with Jumbo Tsuruta and Akira Taue. And so the final match ended up being an all-foreign affair, Hansen and Spivey versus MVC, winner takes all. It's a chaotic affair, but with literally 1 second to go, Dr. Death pinned Hansen with the Oklahoma Stampede. It's a bit messy, but certainly dramatic, and it's a victory that sets Williams on his road to the top foreigner position. 1991 would prove to be just as fruitful for Hansen and Spivey, and they avenged their loss against the MVC on their way to another 20 points. However, losses to Tsuruta and Taue and Misawa and Kawada would end up leaving them just out of contention on the final night, which saw the MVC repeat their victory by beating the Super Generation Army. Their match on the first night against Misawa and Kawada is especially worth watching, a lightning-fast brawl that packs a lot into just 12 minutes. Spivey continued to participate in the tag league after his team with Hansen, but he never came close to these levels again when teamed up with Kendall Windham, Johnny Ace and Jim Steele. Those teams just made up the numbers, really. Okay, we are now at the 4 winners, and geez, this first one is an absolute super team, and no mistake. Hansen and Genichiro Tenryu are in 4th place simply because they only competed together in one tournament, but it's a team that's simply unstoppable. Much like Hansen and Vader, putting 2 guys like this together simply isn't fair on everybody else, a gigantic slab of lawful evil that throws the whole tag world out of balance. They may have only been together for a few months before Tenryu made his shock departure in 1990, but in that time Hansen and Tenryu won the tag straps 3 times, and they completely dominated the 1989 Tag League along the way. Simply put, Hansen and Tenryu ran the table, winning every single match and finishing with a perfect 18 points, the first and indeed only time that a team won the Tag League with a 100% record. Only one other team kept up the pace with them, that being the Olympians, Jumbo Tsuruta and Yoshiaki Yatsu, and naturally they faced each other in the final match. In a long, brutal and absolutely classic bout, one where Hansen ends up with a crimson mask, Yatsu has to get bandaged up but returns to kick ass, Tenryu acts like a complete shit to his former partner, and Tsuruta has to survive simply being isolated for so long, Hansen is finally able to take Yatsu out with the Western Lariat and just score a 3 as Tenryu barely holds Jumbo back. This was Hansen's 4th Tag League victory, and it was Tenryu's 3rd. And yeah, they were the champs alright. You do wonder how long more this particular partnership would have lasted, seeing as it all comes to an abrupt end in All Japan for Tenryu in April of 1990, but this team had the comically ludicrous record that you would expect from one consisting of the undisputed top foreigner and one of the 2 undisputed top natives. The MVC put an end to their 3rd and final tag title reign, so perhaps a big rivalry between them would have been in their immediate future pre-Exodus, with this 1989 Tag League victory basically being the decisive feud ender against the Olympians, who they'd already traded the belts with. But, of course, everything changed. In 3rd place, we've got the $1 Million Man. Hansen and Ted DiBiase perhaps isn't quite as utterly bombastic and dominant a team as the one that Hansen had with his two most famous partners, but it's still an all-timer in terms of success. While the PWF tag belts weren't defended a whole lot back in their day, they still held those belts for nearly 2 years. Ted DiBiase had worked All Japan tours for a couple of years before 1985, but he basically replaces Bruiser Brody as Stan Hansen's partner following Brody's departure to New Japan. He's a completely different wrestler to Brody, but still a very effective one, and the contrast between Hansen and DiBiase makes for a good dynamic, a change from the shock and awe approach that Hansen and Brody took. Hansen and DiBiase won the Tag League in 1985, although it's kind of an odd tournament. It's a very tight field, and the tournament ends up being dominated by double countouts, double disqualifications and draws. With everyone so tightly packed together, Hansen and DiBiase win the tournament with a mere 7 points, which sounds ridiculous. The likes of them, Harley Race and Jesse Barr, that's Jimmy Jack Funk by the way, Giant Baba and Dory Funk Jr., the Ishin Gundan team of Riki Chosu and Yoshiaki Yatsu, Tenryu and Tsuruta, they all cancelled each other out basically. There's so many double countouts and, unlike a 30-minute draw, you get no points for a double countout. We don't even really get a decisive result. The leading teams all drew on the final night, Hansen and DiBiase's 30-minute draw against Ishin Gundan giving them the single point they needed to eke out the win. Not an essential tournament, in all honesty, unless you really like double countouts. 1986 has a few less double countouts and draws, so it's a bit more palatable, and the Hansen DiBiase team ends up with 10 points. Yeah, more than they won 1985 with. This tag league actually finishes with a 4-team playoff on 12th of December. We start with 2 double countouts, the first of which takes out the Funks and Ishin Gundan, seeing as they finished on 9 points. The second double countout happens between Hansen and DiBiase and Tenryu and Tsuruta. They then face each other in the final, and guess how Tenryu and Tsuruta win it? Yeah, they win it by countout. I'm not going to lie and say that these are the best times to be watching the Tag League, but still, a first and second place is enough for Hansen and DiBiase to be the Lariat's third most successful Tag League team. And of course, they were going to make a return in 1993. Ted DiBiase left the WWF in August, going straight from there back into All Japan and winning the tag belts on his first night back in the company, Hansen and DiBiase defeating the Holy Demon Army on the 3rd of September. They would have certainly performed well in the Tag League, and Hansen and DiBiase won their first match of the tournament quite easily against Richard Slinger and Tracy Smothers. However, DiBiase suffered a severe neck injury, the extent of which became clear the next night following a non-tournament match against Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala. He withdrew from the tournament and subsequently decided to call it a career at the age of 39, soon returning to the WWF as a commentator and then manager. The 2 points that Hansen won with DiBiase were transferred to the team with his new partner, which, as mentioned previously, was Giant Baba. It's actually a pretty close one Finn between third and second, seeing as both DiBiase and Terry Gordy had a first and second place when teamed with Hansen, and particularly in the case of the 1987 tournament, Finns do get very confusing because, well, on the face of it, it's a 4-way tie for the runner-up spot. Anyway, with all this in mind, Terry Gordy gets second place based on the total number of points won, that being far more than DiBiase won with Hansen. Of course, the team itself scarcely needs an introduction, although it's important to note that here, for the first time, Stan Hansen was paired up with someone significantly younger. His team with Gordy is hugely successful, of course, they also win the tag titles twice, but there is a certain dynamic here in which Stan Hansen is partnered with someone who quite obviously is going to challenge him for the top foreigner spot at some point. Anywho, 1987's their first tournament, and it's a wild one. Again, we have a lot of double countouts, especially against the leading teams, and on the final day there were actually 5 teams in contention for the Yusho. Alongside Hansen and Gordy, we've got the Olympians, a returning Bruiser Brody and Jimmy Snuka, the Revolution team of Genichiro Tenryu and Asura Hara, and the Funks, all of whom could have a shot at winning in the Budokan. It ends up breaking down like this. The Funks keep their faint hopes alive with a win over the Youngbloods, finishing on 14 points. We then get a double count-out between Revolution and Hansen and Gordy, meaning that they also finish on 14. Depending on the final match, there is a possibility of another 14 playoff. Another double count-out would result in that. However, the final match sees the Olympians defeat Brody and Snuka, giving them 15 points and the tag league. Brody and Snuka also finish on 14. The double countouts and draws can make this all very confusing at first until you understand that again, there is 1 point for a time limit draw, but no points for a double countout or double disqualification. 1988 happily is a little more clear cut, at least in the finish. This time we had 4 teams in contention on the last night. Hansen and Gordy, the Olympians, the Dream Heel team of Abdullah the Butcher and Tigerjeet Singh, and Genichiro Tenryu and Toshiaki Kawada. Tsuruto and Yatsu defeat Butcher and Singh by countout and they finish on 16. It is possible for them to be in a playoff depending on the final bout. This doesn't happen because instead we get Hansen and Gordy winning against Tenryu and Kawada in what was, for my money, easily the best tag league final up to that point. An absolute classic, one of those matches that shows the way to the King's Road. It's a big coming out performance for the young Dangerous K, who takes quite the beating that he sells fantastically, also getting some fiery comeback spots of his own. However, the youngster is ultimately taken out of commission once Hansen destroys his legs, leaving Tenryu to fight alone. And try as he might, Gordy and Hansen eventually prove to be too strong, resulting in a final pin that gives him and Gordy the decisive final score of 17 points. The victory gives Hansen his 3rd tag league, and it's the first of 3 for Terry Gordy. I have looked at this match before in other places, such as the Big Misawa and Kawada series, and it's an absolute must-watch. And of course, the top spot is pretty clear. Hansen's biggest tag league success undoubtedly came with Bruiser Brody. Hell, Hansen's first big night in All Japan came when he accompanied Brody and Jimmy Snuka to the ring for the final in 1981 and hit Terry Funk with a crucial Western lariat on the outside, basically securing the tag league for the heels. They started teaming after that, and they were most certainly not merciful. Hansen and Brody laid waste to all in their path, not even caring about winning at points, just about violence and bloodshed. Although wins would certainly come, including a year-long PWF tag title reign. As for the tag league, Brody is the only guy to partner Hansen in 3 tournaments. Technically DiBiase was in 3 tournaments with Hansen as well, although it doesn't really count seeing as Ted was only in 1 match for his 3rd outing. Hansen and Brody's first tournament is 1982, and the main story of the whole thing is about the Funks looking to get revenge on Hansen and Brody. They're basically destined from the start to face each other in a winner-takes-all final. In the end, it does end up going down as a win for the Funks, although not exactly a decisive one. They win a remarkably intense final by disqualification, Hansen and Brody certainly on top, but denied when the lariat manages to eviscerate the referee in the course of handing out his beatings. Naturally from there, the heels go thoroughly apeshit in the post-match, even beating up Lou Fez when he tries to enter and become a 2nd referee. So yeah, a win for the Funks, but hardly an ideal one. In 1983, the inevitable occurs, with Brody and Hansen getting their victory. As it happens, results need to go a bit in their favour for them to have the opportunity. They start the final night with 10 points, one behind the teams of Duncum Jr and Giant Baba, and Jumbo Tsuruta and Genichiro Tenryu. Dory and Baba get undone by a team of dastardly heels, Tigerjeet Singh and Omanasuke Ueda completely out of contention, but acting as total spoilers on the final night, dragging the faces to a double countout and meaning that the final match is winner takes all. Said final bout between Brody and Hansen and Tsuryu is a good one indeed, with the typical sort of thing you would expect from the quartet. Tenryu in particular is the younger guy here, and he does put on an exceptional sell-in performance. In the end though, he is the one who gets taken down following a Western lariat, snaring Stan Hansen his first tag league and Brody his second. The odds are pretty good on them going back to back in 1984, and as is often the case with the final night, 4 teams have a shot. The 2 duos that cancel each other out this time around are the Funks and Nick Bockwinkel and Harley Race. The teams go to a 30-minute draw, leaving them on 10 points. This time Tsuryu are on 9 points, Brody and Hansen are on 10. It's winner take all again, and Tsuryu get their revenge. It is a fine match for the most part, although again, yeah, it's not a decisive victory. It's another DQ that happens when the heel foreigners get too carried away, Hansen getting disqualified after he punches Joe Higuchi. It's not wholly satisfying nowadays, but well, that was often the nature of the beast in Showa Pro-Res era tag wrestling, particularly with someone like Brody in the bout who, as we have mentioned before, did not exactly like to lose, and certainly not cleanly. People did eventually get more than a little sick of all these messy endings later on in the 1980s, but for now they lapped it up, and it's all part of the lengthy narrative of Hansen and Brody basically being unbeatable. The only guys who truly end up beating them are themselves. If Brody hadn't departed in 1985, chances are pretty good that he and Hansen would have won the tag league again at the end of that year. Either way, he is quite clearly the top partner for the Lariat. And that about does it for this little video. It's a nice quick one that's perhaps a bit more stat driven, a bit more inside baseball and whatnot than the usual, but it's fun to get kinda nerdy about a tournament like the Tag League, something that generally took quite a lot of time to put together, a month-long battle that All Japan ended up getting down to a fine art form. You may have noticed that I always take a bit of time out to mention Tag League escapades, and well, that's because I love it. The occasional odd teams, the matchups that you don't usually see, the lengthy stories, legends who largely do exhibitions making a big drive for this tournament, and obviously the classic finals. So do forgive this bout of Tag League nerdery. It is, after all, a good opportunity to do another video about the almighty Lariat. And as he raises up those Texas Longhorns and gives the big old shout of "Yeep!" I'll say thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye for now.